wakati wa ukikanyanga kwa bahati mbaya bila viatu, ngozi yote inakung'oka.
Daktari aliniambia ni lazima hiyo titi yangu yote itolewe kwa sababu iko na shida.
There is a significant worry in this country about the inability to understand what I would call radio profiles of the country.
When temperatures are high here, you get a number of people complaining of cancer, and when it's raining season.
Bordering Ethiopia and Moyale to the north, Samburu and Isiolo to the south, Turkana to the northwest and Wajir to the east is Marsabit County, the largest county in the country by some accounts. But deep inside the vast dry county is a silent killer that claims its victims away from the glare of the rest of Kenya: cancer. At Karigi Center, home to at least 8,000, cancer has claimed the lives of 38 people as of 2009, and the number is growing. It is a trend that has plagued this area for close to 2 decades now.
When I came here 2003, I stayed almost for 2 years. Then I started receiving patients with complaints of difficulty in swallowing, difficulty in eating, and the patients are complaining of losing weight, a lot of pain, chest pains and throat pain. And after treating them with no improvement, I decided to refer them to the nearest hospital, which is Marsabit.
Assunta is the face of the government in Karigi town, a town 100 kilometers and more from Marsabit town. When we got here, Assunta had just received news from a local resident asking her to attend to a young child. Assunta leaves behind more than 10 patients waiting in line for treatment, and off we head to a small village 4 kilometers from here. We come face to face with the first among the many cases of cancer in Kargi. The mother tells us she noticed her baby's belly had started swelling and her child was wasting away. The child was diagnosed with the cancer of the stomach. The amount of money needed to contain the rapid spread of the cancerous cells was simply too much for the mother. The child is only 3 years old, but the mother knows she has to prepare for the worst. The mother is too distraught to speak to us and tells Assunta, a government nurse from Karigi Medical Dispensary, that the condition of her child has worsened since she returned home from Meru, where she had gone to seek for medical help. A trip, she says, was not successful. The mother had no choice but to return home to Kargi. The mother says she cannot raise any more funds to save her dying child.
Very hard.
When I touched the child's stomach, I could feel the growing tumor. The pain evident in the eyes of the child. A few weeks later, Assunta called us to report that the child had passed away. The disease could have been contained, but the family was unable to raise money to save the life of one of the youngest cancer patients in Karigi town.
have 15 villages around the facility. All the villages are affected. There is no single village that was not affected. Even in the center of the town, there are people who have died of cancer.
Mtu hiyo kulipa transport, hata kuna wale hawana kitu hapo kula leo usiku. Wanasaidiwa na projects, wanasaidiwa na relief food, tegemeo yao kubwa ni hiyo. Na wale huwa wanapata, wengine wao hana bwana na watoto wao ni wachanga.
We leave this small village and head to yet another in Kargi. Inside this small manyata is yet another cancer story. Here we meet Milget Esmarakole, a mother battling cancer of the mouth. According to her, it began with something strange growing in her mouth.
Wakati wa kwanza nilipojua kwamba nilikuwa na shida kama hii, nilianza kujua kuna kitu inamea ndani ya mdomo yangu. Nikamuuliza mama moja mwenzangu aniangalie hiyo ni nini. Aliniambia hiyo ni kawaida, itapona. Lakini ilizidi kunisumbua, nikisikia uchungu. Nikaamua kwenda dispensary ambayo iko karibu na nyumbani. Nikapatiwa matibabu safari 3 ambaye sijapona. Ya 4 nasa akaniambia ni mzuri niende niangaliwe vizuri ijulikane shida yangu ni nini.
Melget was informed about what exactly was ailing her when she visited Kijabe Hospital. The cancer was rapidly spreading and doctors had to graft part of her body to replace the cancerous parts that had to be cut off. But the ballooning medical bill was something she couldn't handle.
Nilipoenda huko walikata hiyo nyama ilikuwa inamea ndani ya mdomo yangu, walikata na kuituma, ambayo waliniambia nirudi baada ya wiki 2 nipate majibu. Na baadaye pia walinipiga picha ya kichwa, na hiyo yote waliniambia kwamba niko na saratani ambayo ilikuwa kwa stage ya kwanza.
The only security logbook from a relative she used to secure a loan was withdrawn. Frustrated, she had no choice but to return home.
Safari ya pili tena niliporudi nyumbani, hiyo mahali tu ilianza kuwa na kinonda ambayo inatoka na uzaa na damu, na uchungu ilinizidia. Nikaamua tena nirudi niende nionekane kama ni hiyo saratani ndio imerudi. Kwenda AIC Kijabe niliambiwa ya kwamba tena lazima nifanyiwe upasuaji na nyama lazima itatolewa kwa sehemu zangu zingine za mwili ndio wapate kunishonea hapo, lakini kwanza lazima watoe hiyo mali yote ambayo ugonjwa imefika. Kutoka hapo niliambiwa wanataka 1,300.
She died a few months later. As the sun sets on the vast semi-desert town, graves that dot the villages here have become a constant reminder of a ravaging condition that is threatening the very livelihoods of the population here. The cancer menace is not restricted to this town alone, where the only source of food is mainly meat and water. Before we leave Karigi, Asunta informs us that the other 2 cancer survivors, Balatole Nalgele and Supkon Esmaralal, their stories the same, but the experiences are different.
Kwenda hospitali ya Nairobi waliniambia lazima nipimwe damu, na kwa hiyo titi ambayo inaniuma kuna nyama kidogo itakatwa na itapelekwa ili wapime, na niliambiwa nirudi baada ya wiki 2. Baada ya wiki 2 niliporudi waliniambia ni saratani ndio inaanza, iko kwa stage ya kwanza, na nisipokubali itolewe itatapakaa kwa mwili ingine mzima. Nilikubali nitolewe ndio nipate kuishi, na sasa naendelea vizuri. Wakati wa kwanza nilianza kushindwa kufanya kazi ya nyumbani. Ninajisikia kama nasikia kisungusungu, nasikia kama nataka kuzimia. Baada ya wiki 2 nikaona titi ya upande ya kulia inaanza kuvimba, kuna uvimbe kidogo, na hapo awali sikuwa nayo.
The two are now aging mothers and grandmothers to several grandsons and daughters. The two have had their breasts cut to stop the rapid spread of cancer in their bodies.
Tumeshindwa kujua kwa sababu hatuna vifaa vya kutosha ya kupima kujua ni nini ndio inasababisha. So tunaashwa tu tukijiuliza, je, ni chakula ambaye tunakula ndio inatuletea hii shida? Ni maji ambaye tunakunywa ndio inatuletea hii shida? Ama ni hali ya hewa? Hatujui. Tumeashwa na maswali mengi, na tungetaka watu wengine wale wako na vifaa kama hivyo wakuje wafanye research ndio tujue shida ama aswa ni nini inasababisha, ndio hata sisi wenyewe tukae tukijua, na pia tupate kujua suluhisho ni nini, ndio watu wasiendelee kufa na mzigo isiache kuwa kwa familia.
The Karigi dispensary has maintained a list of patients who have died and those still battling cancer. By the time we were here, 64 cases of cancer had been reported at Karigi alone, the numbers rising by half from the previous years.
Datani wanasema hakuna haja ya kwenda kwingine kwa sababu kuliko mimi nitumie hiyo pesa ambaye ningeenda kupimwa ama kupatiwa dawa ya kuniendelesha kuishi, afadhali watoto wangu wale wako na afya watumie. So wanarudi kuongoja tu siku zao nyumbani.
Doctors in Meru, where most of the Karigi cases have been referred to, say they receive 3 to 5 cases related to cancer every week. Most of the cases involve upper respiratory infections.
When the patients come to the facility, after I take the history, most of them they complain that the first time they start realizing the difficulty in swallowing is after taking meat. So I don't know the relationship, because almost everybody is complaining of that. After just eating meat, they start having that difficulty in swallowing. The same people also come to the facility asking for treatment. When they take that water, somebody presents like having a sexually transmitted infection. Somebody comes with burning sensation of urine, difficulty in passing urine, and even the results as they say that the outcome is urinating blood.
We leave Karigi Center for Kalacha, where we are told another cancer patient is nursing the disease. This time, it is a man. Kalacha, located more than 80 kilometers from Marsabit town, is home to perhaps the smallest population in the larger Marsabit County. The housing structures here in this small village are countable, but the small town is also home to a graveyard. It's not clear how many of those buried here have died of cancer-related complications. Lying on a mat and in a lot of pain is yet another cancer victim. Watching over him is the wife.
They said they needed part of my growing tumor in my throat cut, but I refused. I told myself, after all, I will eventually die. They said they cannot help me out. I decided to return home.
He says he was diagnosed with the cancer of the throat that has affected most of the victims documented by the local practitioners. Kura is among the many residents that have their cases documented. Those whose medical conditions have not been captured have either died or the number of those alive is not known. The fact that the cancer appears to be targeting older people more than the younger ones has raised fears that it's more than genetic.
Nina shaka, tumefikiria mambo mingi, tumesema ni maji, tumesema ni chakula, tumesema ni chemical ambayo tunatumia tofauti, tumesema ni maziwa ya mali kwa sababu tunadunga wanyama shindano, tunasema ni hizi. Tumeshuku. We are not expert, lakini tumejaribu kufikiria mambo mingi.
Something they're either eating or drinking is driving the cancer cases. And in the fields of Karigi lies the first suspects. Wells that were dug by a foreign company 26 years ago in the quest for oil in this region. 2 major boreholes in Karigi were drilled just yards away from the oil exploration site. In the wake of suspicion that something toxic may have been dumped here, a government report recommended the closing of all major wells used by locals for drawing water for domestic use. But that has not happened for the last 5 years.
Na kuna pia mzungu mwingine alikuwa anaitwa Bill. Alichukua pia ya maji kupima, alituambia kuna arsenic nyingi kwa maji yetu. Na pia kuna watu wengine pia walipima maji wakatuambia iko na mercury content mingi. Na kulingana na vile tunajua mercury ni corrosive sana. So kama hiyo maji yetu iko na mercury mingi, hiyo inaweza kuwa ni sababu moja ya watu kuwa na kansa ya shingo na ya tumbo, kwa sababu tunakunywa hiyo maji, tunatumia hiyo maji kupikia.
The report recommended that the residents find alternative water points for their animals and for personal consumption. But to date, dozens continue to fall ill. The numbers are rapidly rising and at a very dangerous pace. It is not just the people who have borne the brunt of this environmental pollution. In the year 2000, some strange occurrence jolted locals of Karigi and had them talking for several days and weeks. At least 2,000 livestock died hours after drinking water from this borehole that hasn't been shut down. The government conducted investigations into the sudden death of animals and had put the figure at 600 as the number of animals that had died. The government blamed high levels of salt in water, but did not fail to mention that the water contained high levels of chemical concentration. After the break, we return to Chalbi Desert, where some of the wells are located, as we seek expert opinion on water movement in times of heavy rains and the connection that might exist between the spiraling cases of cancer and the only source of water for the residents, the boreholes of Karigi.
I do not have money. That's the reason why I'm waiting to die. My husband left me when he realized I'd fallen ill. My daughter is very young, and I'm just waiting for someone to help me.
The faces of a ravaging disease that continues to claim lives in the arid county of Marsabit. It is a story that is told in Karigi, Kalacha, Maikona, areas in the larger Marsabit County, and now it has spread its killer tentacles to Bobisa. Cheruwario just discovered she's a victim of throat cancer, a disease that has become more prevalent in the region than any other form of cancer.
Junani unitoko imbira hakulaga khena gakaya. Khana lukubar granjere. Akia dene kakasi. Amdu wa masalle wa gafasi. Imbira halaga na hena didigha na rajite. Adu rejitik na rajite. Tam tae wa umhi ya madede wari sibitala ma yati dedi guddo ti debiye yere nani sibital tokkotti dabran unjere Kenya ta dabran.
Ile ripoti tumepata zaidi kwa sababu sisi kama wa chief tunaandika monthly report. Ile mali kansa iko zaidi, ile inaongoza ni Karki, inafuatiwa na Dukana, inafuatiwa na Bubisa.
KTN could not independently verify the numbers, but the chief was armed with a list of 20 people he says have died as a result of the killer disease in the recent past. Bobisa fell under the 14,000 square kilometer exploration site. Sometimes in May 1984, Amaco Corporation, the parent company of Amaco Petroleum Kenya, was given the green light to prospect for oil in Kenya. The agreement signed with Amaco was to a tune of 691 million shillings. The exploration will, according to the government and the international giant oil company, roll out on a staggering 14,000 square kilometers. Marsabit was at the center of the plan. A top government delegation was sent to Marsabit to announce the good news to the local residents. Oil had been discovered, and with it, the lives of the poor population was set to change forever. Amaco drilled at least 5 oil wells, among them Sirius 1, Bellatrix 1 and Chalbe 3 in the northwest of Anza Basin and Othori 1 well in South Anza Basin. Most of the wells were dry, but the narrative at the time was they had the potential of oil and gas deposits. By 1989, the company had wound up its work in the region. No oil was discovered, but according to locals here, the company was prospecting for more than oil.
Wakati zingine, wakati ya drilling, wanafunga bendera ile nyekundu, sisi tunafungwa pua kwa kitambaa, alafu tunaenda mbali. Alafu baada ya nusu saa au saa moja, tunaambiwa rudi, hakuna kitu sasa, kitu kingine inatendeka.
At the time, a young man, Ibor, says their services were enlisted not on where the drilling was taking place, but deep in trenches where they helped bury containers containing what he says was some red substance.
Wanabeleka mbali, akiwa bado funguika, wanabeleka mbali. Alafu baada ya trakta ndio nauma analete na kumpisa ndani.
Ibor says he has no recollection of what they actually buried deep in the earth, but the substance, when it came into contact with the skin, was corrosive.
Kile inafanana chumvi, wakati wa ukikanyanga, ukikanyanga kwa bahati mbaya bila viatu, ngozi yote inakung'oka. Tena wakati ngozi inatoka, hakuna jeraha. Inafanana tu ngozi tunang'oka, lakini hakuna jeraha.
We walk with Ibor in the sweltering heat and approximately 5 kilometers from Karigi center to one of the sites where Amaco sank one of the oil wells. Save for the sand and the heat, there's little activity to show that 26 years ago, earth movers were here. It is also not clear what exactly was buried in some of these sites that Ibor says was selected a few meters from the oil wells. Was it more than the drilling mud? Could it be that apart from the oil exploration, there was more that was laid beneath the surface that has emerged to haunt the communities here. In 2006, cases of cancer in Marsabit hit an alarming level, catching the attention of Parliament. The government, giving in to pressure, appointed a team of experts that was later deployed to the region. The team was concerned about the number of cancer cases and the growing suspicion surrounding the drinking water the resident had complained was not fit for human consumption, especially during the rainy season.
If you take the history, they say that I took the water from the same well, that well. It's a common problem, and not other wells.
There were concerns that maybe there was a relationship between rainwater finding its way to the waterbed that was the source of the boreholes. The National Environmental Management Authority, NEMA, in its report concluded that the water in Onsarigo was not fit for human consumption. The report warned that water from boreholes pose serious health concerns if ingested. But contrary to the report, 5 years on, the residents here still use water from the very same bowls to quench their thirst. A local non-governmental organization, Global Concern Incorporated, got an American team to test the borehole water at Karigi area, and the results were alarming. The levels of nitrite and nitrates and arsenic in water were high. Nitrite was singled out as the most toxic and is linked to the death of 7,000 sheep in the year 2000. According to the experts, those high levels of nitrates could have come into contact with the waterbed of boreholes in the area. The levels of arsenic in water were also high. Arsenic has been singled out as a cancer-causing agent.
The water is said that it has a lot of nitrates, it has mercury, it has arsenic, and as per my knowledge, mercury is not safe for drinking, and also it's high because it's 65.5, and I don't think it's good for human or animal consumption.
Part of the recommendations was to install a water filter to lower the levels of arsenic in water. The filter was installed. 5 years later, it is not in use. Experts warn there is more than contaminated water. Something else could be behind the high cancer cases.
As long as that content the chemical is dissolved in water and the water is drained to the rivers or to the water bodies and you draw it, depending on the concentration, you are totally at risk. When it gets underground, and it also depends on the amount of rain that will allow it to percolate to the water table down underground. The moment it gets to the water table, it's now a shared sort of contamination underground. And therefore, it could be if the water table, if there is a borehole sunk here and another one, say even 10 or 20 or even 30, and there are regulations on what should be the distance between one borehole and another, then so long as they are sharing the water table, then certainly the dissolved substances is down there and it doesn't matter at that point.
Indeed, the 2 times sheep have died in their numbers and residents complained of passing blood-stained urine was immediately after consuming this water following heavy rains. The task force dispatched from Nairobi discovered that Amaco, which was later bought by oil giant BP, did a shoddy job of sealing up some of the oil wells they had sunk during the oil explorations. The findings noted that residents risked coming into contact with high levels of radioactive materials.
The effect of radiation, especially radiation, is cumulative. It doesn't happen immediately. It is something that accumulates over the years. It can go over 10, 15, even 20 years. And again, it is genotypic dependent, meaning that different people react differently. It's not a uniform sort of, symptom that you will see on everybody. So other people will react pretty quick, others will stay a little longer, and you will see all sorts of activities. So yes, WHO and International, Radiation Board that controls the activities about radiation in the world certainly recommend that human beings that are not working in radioactive environment as part of their occupation should not be exposed to certain levels of ionizing radiation. Because if you do, then you are at a risk of, succumbing to cancer at different time points.
The team was concerned about the presence of a white substance around the well. Locals had also, after some time, abandoned grazing their livestock near the area. When we visited Bellatrix 1, the well was still exposed. Nearby, still some form of activity, the white substance still visible around the well. NEMA faulted the government agencies for not heading back to the site to ascertain that exposed soil was properly returned to its original position. Sirius 1, another well sunk by BP, is properly sealed, and around it there is no sign of the white substance that locals at some point noticed their livestock had ingested while grazing near the well.
And you don't have a deliberate mechanism to seal off this following extraction or excavation, then that is where the risk is.
In the middle of Chalby Desert is Chalby 3 oil well, sunk by the American company Amoco. Villagers were only allowed to dig the trenches. The burying of sacks and boxes containing substances was only done by the foreigners. Years later, the white substance behind me has been the result. Residents here say after several years they dug up the buried items. The residents were apparently curious to know what exactly was placed there. The results are empty containers, metals and other hardware, and water the residents here say never dries up for decades now. Where the water's made its way, there's a white substance. Residents say they came across containers, huge canvas materials that they carted away and used the same to cover their manyatas from the scorching sun. The government task force does not make mention of the water and the haphazard way the materials have been strewn all over the desert surface. Nothing exists to suggest that there was any effort made to make sure the well were properly sealed after residents raided the site and carted away materials. The oil wells are kilometers away from Kargi, Maikona, Kalacha and Bobisa, where cases of cancer are now on the rise. The disease that is now targeting both the young and the old continues unabated to raid homes and villages with wanton destruction. The local dispensary in Karigi continues to receive cancer-related complications.
Several government officers who have come here, especially from NEMA, they came here, they took samples of water, but up to now they did not give us any feedback. They told us, they came October 2010 and they said that they'll come after 2 weeks, but up to now we have not got any results or seen anybody back.
Na hii kanza sana inaanza na watu wazee, watu wazima, kuanzia 40 years kuelekea mbele. Sio ni watu ile wachanga, watoto hawapati sana ni watu wazima, watu ile zaidi ya miaka 40.
Apart from that, a task force recommended that residents of Marsabit be provided with alternative source of water and not from the contaminated boreholes.
But if you take the history, they say that I took the water from the same well, that well. It's a common problem, and not other wells, but only one well.
Construction of Badeza Dam has since stalled, leaving the residents at the mercy of water described as harmful. Some of the wells still stand. Cancer cases continue to be reported, and with the stretched medical facility, the plight of the residents of Karigi, Maikona, Bobisa, Kalacha and many other villages might not be well documented. Why hasn't the government acted on the National Environment Management Authority report, and why has no one been prosecuted? Why was the multinational company allowed to get away with so many questions unanswered? We tried getting Amaco Kenya's side of the story, but the company no longer exists, having changed its name and identity. The warning from NEMA the residents get alternative source of safe drinking water appears to have been ignored. The government was to set up a proper communication channel to document rising cases of cancer, but that too has not happened. The Interministerial Task Force was supposed to return to Karigi with their findings, but they are yet to arrive here a decade on. For now, residents have an idea of what is killing them, but they do not know how to contain it.
Maombi yetu zaidi kwa kila njia, tunataka serikali yetu watafute wataalamu, watafute njia wananchi wanasaidika. Sababu wamekuwa na wasiwasi. Wanasema serikali ina maarifa, ina nguvu, ina mkono mrefu. Wanakuja kwetu. Ni namna gani hii ugonjwa? Serikali imeshinda kila kitu. Ni namna gani mambo ya kansa ambaye ametuadhiri zaidi imeshinda kuonekana ama kutafutwa?
Nothing is happening. It seems that we are not Kenyans and we don't know why.
And so families like this continue to wait for help that may never come. And every month more graves continue to add on to what is now Kenya's desert of death. Onsarigo, KTN.